On this edition of Motorcycle Experience, we start to cafe a cruiser and get creative in front of a live audience. In the land of Wild Bill and Calamity Jane, we'll saddle up, remembering the T-clock before departure, along with practicing how to hit an object. As Motovan presents Motorcycle Experience. Hello and welcome to Motorcycle Experience, the voice of motorcyclists everywhere. I'm Dave Hatch, and this week we continue to celebrate our 25th season of The Experience. Let's kick things off right away now with a road test of one of the crown jewels in the Harley-Davidson family, the Ultra Limited. Behold Harley-Davidson's 2014 Ultra Limited. From a distance, the motor company's classic Ultra Glide Road Eater may look all business as usual, but upon closer inspection, you'll discover it's been heavily revised in almost every aspect. The revision venture, dubbed Project Rushmore, implemented over 100 changes across the platform. Some are major in scope, like linked ABS brakes, a new hydraulic clutch, and a much beefier fork. Some are more subtle, but just as impactful, like completely restyled switchgear and gauges, wider, deeper saddles, a new one-touch luggage system, and redesigned bodywork. Mind you, it will be pretty hard to miss the new Boombox 6.5 infotainment system, an interactive Bluetooth onboard audio and info system that boasts a bigger sound and more intuitive control. So how does it all work? Well, here's this week's guest road tester and Triumph Bonneville owner, Kemp Stewart.
Kemp, Harley-Davidson calls this the Limited. I really think they should be calling it the Ultimate. I mean, this really does express the pinnacle of Harley-Davidson in terms of their engineering and style. What was your first impression when you looked at the bike?
Yeah, the first impression was just the size of the bike. There's no question that it's a Harley-Davidson. It's got the look, it's got the feel of a Harley-Davidson, but they've made a lot of very interesting updates to it. And yeah, it was a pleasure to drive.
Yeah, the Rushmore thing is all about tweaking it and refining it. I guess let's just start first and foremost with that engine and 103 cubic inches. What did you think of the V-twin? I
actually loved it. That was one of the first significant things that I noticed. There was a constant power. It's not like the old Harley-Davidsons that always sounded like they were out of tune. Mm-hmm. I was very pleased with the consistent power through it, and yeah, it's very significant.
A lot of fun to sort of kick through the gears, eh? Third and fourth gear, lots of torque.
Lots of torque, absolutely, yeah.
Harley-Davidson on this model now have introduced their linked braking system and ABS brakes. How did you find it in terms of stopping power?
Yes, on a couple of our runs this morning, Dave, I exercised the braking power, and it was very, very positive. It was great. There was no pull. There was it stayed the course, and it was instantaneous response. It was super.
How did you find it for just comfort, wind protection, the riding position?
Yeah, well, they've redesigned the whole cowling system, and made some interesting modifications to the airflow and so on. There's a airflow system up here, and also the driver can actually open the vents and so on, and I thought it was quite an interesting innovation. I really like the way they set up the cluster package on this. It was easy to read. The numbers for a guy my age, the numbers are big, and I could see them without any trouble whatsoever.
They seem to have put a lot of effort into restyling the ergonomics of the switchgear. Yeah. Did you like that?
Yeah, it took a few moments to get used to it. One thing, the turn indicators are on the left and right bars, and I'm not quite used to that, but that works.
What did you think of the bags? They've revised the luggage system and the hinges and everything.
Well, for some people, they would get away for the weekend. The way my wife and I pack, we could probably cruise for a week with the space that they've got in here. It's super.
What did you think of the quality of the paint and the chrome and just the overall fit and finish?
Yeah, it's they've put a lot of effort into it. I'm partial to gray and blacks, and this was a natural. My bicycle, my car, and my own motorcycle are gray and black, so this fit right in. And one interesting thing is that just on the Harley Davidson here, if you catch the light properly, it's got a kind of a diamond quality to it. It's rainbow multicolored flecks, so it's yeah, it really stands out, catches your eye.
Who is this bike going to appeal to? Who should consider this?
Yeah, Harley drivers are going to love it. It's a step up into the 21st century. They've really refined it. I was really quite impressed with it, and I would suggest that anybody who's looking for a touring bike, they should give this very, very serious consideration. It's a great bike. It's lots of room. The seat is wider. The tunes are great. I can see a couple semi-retired folks getting into this and taking off to warm climes. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you liked it, Kemp.
Thanks
Did a
very
great
much.
job.
Thank you.
Great.
It's fun.
Hang in there. There's plenty more experience still in the tank. Next, Norm and I head to Mount Rushmore, while world-famous airbrush artist David Arrigo goes coast to coast. So stay with us. Portions of Motorcycle Experience are brought to you in part by Harley Davidson, BMW Motorrad, and Triumph Motorcycles. Closed captioning of this program is brought to you by Honda Canada.
Welcome back to The Experience. I'm Dave Hatch. It's time now to catch up with David Arrigo as he gets set to paint a very special motorcycle in front of a live audience. But before we do that, let's catch up with this season's ultimate ride in the Black Hills of South Dakota.
For this year's Ultimate Ride, Norm Wells and myself decided it was time to do the whole South Dakota scene. You know, Sturgis, the Black Hills, Mount Rushmore, a destination rich in late 19th century American history. This is the land of General Custer, Wild Bill Hickok, Sitting Bull, and Crazy Horse. It's also famous for its scenic side trips, and for the past 2 decades or more, motorcyclists have flocked here to explore the roads that stretch between the various photo ops. Recently, we picked up a couple of bimmers in the tiny town of Sturgis and headed for what would be our 3-night base camp in the outlaw town of Deadwood. After grabbing a great meal at the Deadwood Social Club and boning up on our local history, we started out the next morning on our first real day of riding, and spirits were running high.
Well, Norm, here it is, 8:30 a.m., Deadwood, South Dakota, and I guess this is officially the kickoff to our day one. And here in Deadwood, what a great place to base our rides from, because last night it was a lot of fun. There's a lot of history in this town.
Yeah, absolutely. We went to Saloon 10, which is the Deadwood Social Club. Spent a bit of time in there, but just the pictures on the wall that told the history of this town right back to the 1870s, and the buildup of the city, the burn down of the city, the rebuild of the city, a lot of the historical, what built this city, the gold rush, the mining that they were doing in this area. Just very cool.
Yeah, it's almost the number 10 there is almost like a museum into itself, and I guess the interesting history I didn't know that exists here is Wild Bill Hickok was shot here and killed here, and we all learned all about the dead man's hand, 2 aces, 2 eights. So this is really neat, and you know, you could literally spend a day here, but for us, this is base camp. We're heading south. What's the route today? What are we going to see?
We're going to head out of Deadwood this morning, head down 385, get down to about 244, cut across 244, head into Keystone, which is where Mount Rushmore is.
Right.
Do a little bit of visiting there, come out of there and go up this interesting highway called the Needles Highway. And based on the pictures, that's going to be something pretty spectacular to see. Continue on from there, hit the Crazy Horse Memorial, head out towards Custer, and then seeing how much time we have left in the day. You can see here that, you know, the route that we had chosen is here, but if we get short of time or we want to do a little more exploring, we can always just cut up multiple choices. So this map that they have in the hotel is a lot better than what you buy at the gas station.
Thank you, Hampton Inn. Well, it looks great. I mean, there's lots of loops, lots of ways of circling back here to Deadwood. And I asked you yesterday as we were wrapping up, you know, was this going to be a ride about scenery or was it going to be a ride about twisties? And I have to say, we took a 2-hour ride yesterday, and 385, if anything is like 385, man. There were a lot of bends, a lot of curves, and well-kept roads. So I'm really looking forward to today.
Sure.
Let's hit it.
Now be sure to tune in next week as we continue to follow the ultimate ride down in South Dakota. You've got to see how this one plays out. Meanwhile, as I mentioned earlier, we're celebrating 25 years on the air, and as it turns out, Honda Canada is also blowing out a few candles. Let's catch up with our airbrush artist, David Arrigo.
So as a fun way to mark both occasions, we asked him to create us a very special coast-to-coast Honda Goldwing F6B. No easy task when you stop to consider just how many bodywork pieces make up a Goldwing. David started the project in his studio north of Toronto, but once we saw how cool it was to watch his work come to life, we asked him if he'd consider painting the rest of the bike on site in our booth at this year's Toronto Motorcycle Show. Dave loved the idea, and as you'll see, motorcycle fans loved watching him work as well.
The show is about to open a few minutes away. We're in the Motorcycle Experience booth and wanted to show you the first piece that I had completed. This was, of course, completed back in the studio a couple of days ago. This is the front fairing of our Goldwing F6B, and this had actually set the template for the entire design. The one or two images Honda had asked us to utilize was, of course, Mr. Honda and the tie-in with Canada. So taking that, we started off with Mr. Honda, and it's going to end off with all the maple leaves that are going to be blowing right across the bike. This is what all the color is going to be. It's just the red, the black, and the white. This piece here will really pop to life once it's clear coated. Right now, you just have a dull finish on it, and once it comes out of the clear coat shop, watch out, it's going to be bang on. The bike is basically coast to coast. And what we're going to have is on the one side is going to be the West Coast, the other side is going to be representative of the East Coast. And the leaves are going to be flying around the bike, across the tank, and through the back, and it will be tying the whole bike in together when we finish up on the back with the family planting the tree. The game plan is, and it's only a plan, nothing ever ends up the way we want it to, but started this piece here back in my shop. It was nice, cool, calm, good way to start off the bike. Now we find ourselves here at the Toronto Motorcycle Show, and people are starting to fill in, and I know there's going to be a lot of people asking me questions about what I'm doing, why we're doing it, and it's going to be interesting to see 5 o'clock come Sunday where we're at, because it's going to be an entire bike, and this is a pretty ambitious project, even by my standards. Well guys, it was nice talking to you, but I really got to get back to work here. I've got a saddlebag ready, the first piece of the day. So we're in the first minutes of the opening of the show, and I already have a crowd waiting for me, so excuse me.
Now keep it on the side stand because there's still plenty more experience around the bend. Next, we'll fire up Project Lightning Bolt and shift gears with our in-house riding instructor. Stay with us.
Welcome back to The Experience. I'm Dave Hatch. It's time now to catch up with our in-house riding instructor, Clinton Smout. But before we do that, let's stop in at Rob Egan's Speed Shop and catch up with him and his Project Lightning Bolt. This week he's trying to graft the rear wheel, chain-driven off an R1, onto the back of a belt-driven Bolt. So Rob, this week on Project Lightning Bolt, we're going to look at that major component we discussed last week, which was swapping out the rear wheel. We've got the stock one here. Why did you go with the decision to even change it?
Well, we wanted to be able to mount better street rubber on it, so We went with the R1 wheel because it's 17-inch and it's much wider rim and it's much lighter. So
Right.
that has a lot of benefits, especially for a cafe racer.
So you can get stickier rubber on this.
Exactly.
Okay, so people viewing at home will probably say, okay, no problem, just pull the axle and swap wheels, right?
Not quite that easy.
Okay.
Because if you look, this is our R1 axle, this is the Bolt axle, so there's some substantial difference between the two. So that's going to require us to make up a lot of spacers and changes to the actual wheel. Where we did get lucky, being the R1 is a sprocket chain drive, with the Bolt it's a belt drive. So
Right.
when we were checking, we found that the R1 rear drive would actually fit right onto the Bolt wheel. So vice versa, the Bolt drive will fit onto the R1 rear wheel, which is perfect.
Awesome.
But it was a little bit on the long side to get the wheel lined up. So what we've done here, this is our modified rear drive. This will still take the belt drive. We've had to narrow it down by 1/2 inch here, narrow it down by 1/2 inch here, and machine this up so we had a true start to be able to get everything lined up properly so that it'll fit. And it just walks right into the rear wheel.
Awesome. So it's going to retain its belt final drive.
Exactly, which will give it the proper gearing and so on, which is the hard part on a bike like this.
Okay. Is it going to affect the height of the bike?
No, it's similar height overall, but we're actually going to raise the bike up to give it some more ground clearance, and that'll be part of the front end issues as well, so we'll have
Right.
to work with that.
So as you're paying attention to the rear of the bike, are you going to have to change the shocks at all or do anything to the swing arm?
The plan is here we're going to move the shocks forward to raise the back end of the bike up, and we'll have to respring it and valve it, of course, but that's stage 2 on the rear end, and that will give us more ground clearance, and then we'll have to build the front end to suit.
Wow. So this is not just a plug and play. There's going to be a little bit of machining going on
There'll
here.
be quite a bit of machining going on, but it's all genuine Yamaha parts, which is a nice thing, so we're able to access bits and pieces we need pretty quickly, but it's going to be a bit of work.
Okay. Can't wait to see the finished product.
With the clock ticking, Rob's definitely got his work cut out for him. In the meantime, let's catch up with our old friend Clinton Smout, Chief Instructor with the SMART programs, one of the best off-road riding academies in Canada.
So Clinton, this week on Shifting Gears, we're going to talk about how to, believe it or not, hit an object.
Yikes.
It's not what we want to do.
Not a car.
But you know, sometimes when you're adventure riding and you're off-road, you might come across a log or something that's fallen across a trail. And even in the case of that street bike back there, sometimes when you're out on the open road, all of a sudden there's a muffler, you know? So let's talk about how you get over those obstacles.
I think for the last part you were talking about, the street bike, sometimes it's the riders following a transport truck.
Right.
And the truck driver's not going to swerve. They're going to straddle it or just go over it.
Right.
We can't sometimes just go over it. So if you find yourself in that situation where you've got no option, yes, you can go over it.
Right.
Fight the instinct of doing this. Brrr, and getting on the brakes.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you roll off, suspension compresses, our ground clearance is gone, you're way less likely of getting over that obstacle safely.
Right.
So what we say is if you can, drop it a gear so it's crisp throttle response.
Get into the power band.
Again, you're not trying to wheelie over
No,
the
no.
muffler, but stand the suspension up with the throttle. So you're just elongating those front springs.
Right.
Get your tailbone off the seat because we're anticipating going over. When our back wheel hits the obstacle, it's coming up.
Right.
That's like the James Bond eject button.
Right.
So you better not have your spine in the way. That's why we crouch up. Then once you're over the obstacle, chop the throttle. Don't hit that with a really fast spinning wheel. So you just get the front over, the rest of the bike's gonna come over. And then when you think, yay, I've got over
I did it. I survived.
maybe pull over as soon as you get a chance. Check out your tires, your rim.
Yeah, definitely check it through. You might have had something still get caught up or hung up on the bottom of the bike. And like you said, you may all of a sudden now have a slow leak, right? Because you may have cracked your rim or done something like that. Well, that's just some great advice on what to do when you can't avoid an obstacle. Thanks, Clinton.
Excellent, my pleasure.
Okay, now that we've got you all fired up for another season of riding, stay tuned because next, Chief Riding Instructor Jen Martin has some great advice on hitting the road. Portions of Motorcycle Experience are brought to you in part by Harley Davidson, BMW Motorrad, and Triumph Motorcycles. Welcome back as Motovan presents The Experience. I'm Dave Hatch, and we'll wrap up our show now by passing along some sage advice on how to hit the road. In this case, we're talking the pre-ride check. Here now is the Chief Riding Instructor at Georgian College, Jennifer Martin.
You know, Jen, this week on Hitting the Road, you want to talk about pre-flight inspection, and I was nosing around here in the shop and I discovered Harley Davidson, they even have a pre-flight inspection checklist for employees before they go out on a demo ride. So you are a big proponent of T-Clock. Can you explain what that is?
Well, it's an acronym, so each letter stands for something, and like you said, it's a checklist. It's a great thing to get in the habit, and you can check all the steps off in your head to make sure you didn't forget something.
So this is something we're going to do every time we go for a ride?
Absolutely. You can do a quick round if you've just stopped for a bit, but you know, a more thorough check first thing in the morning or once a week.
Okay, so let's go through the checklist. T.
T stands for the tires. So you want to make sure that the inflation is correct, that it's not overinflated or underinflated, because you only have 2 points of contact with you in the road. So you want to make sure that, I mean, that's hugely important.
Absolutely.
As well as check tread, and that there's no cracks in the sidewalls and things like that.
Right, and when you do go to check those tire pressures, make sure you have a good gauge, a good accurate gauge. C.
C, that's cables and controls. So your controls, like first and foremost, your throttle, you want to make sure you have quick returns, so you turn it, make sure you get the response back. Your cables, you want to check, make sure there's no fraying or wear in the cables, so visual inspection there, as well as any leaking.
Okay, we've got L.
L, that's for your lights, and this is hugely important as well. So your lights, you want to make sure that your headlights come on, that it is clean and free of debris.
Right.
I mean, that's a great time to check it over. As well as your tail light. Make sure that that came on as a running light, but also that it engages so that when you use your rear brake, check it both. Your rear brake, it comes on. Your front brake, you apply that and see that it comes on, because you want to make sure that you're not riding without a brake light.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, oil. Right?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That one.
Make sure your oil levels are correct.
Okay. Another C.
C, that's your chassis. So a visual inspection, make sure that everything is secure on the motorcycle. You know, your seat is, in case we're checking your tools. Some people's tools are located underneath the seat. You know, that there's no cracks or anything that's happening there. And just make sure your suspension as well.
You said T-clocks. What's the S?
S is your side stand.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you want to make sure that it returns properly.
Right.
So, because a loose side stand is not a good thing, or that the side stand is up as well when you go to take off.
Right. Pre-flight check. T-clocks. Thanks. Well, that's it for this week's program, folks. We're all out of time, but if you're looking for some more experience, be sure to go online right now, www.motorcycleexperience.ca for the after show. And then until next week, keep your feet on the pegs and your right hand cranked. Bye for now.
Closed captioning of this program was brought to you by Honda Canada.
Hi, I'm Chris.
And I'm Celeste. Happy anniversary, Motorcycle Experience.
25 years.
Hi, I'm Sherry.
And I'm Jim.
Happy
25th anniversary Motorcycle Experience. We're your biggest fans. Yay!